Okay. Hospitality, important point. Any more on that you want to briefly mention, or? Oops, I gotta adjust this one.
No, I don't know what else to say.
Okay, we'll see if others want to elaborate. Who else? Knoxville.
I think that there's a big political difference, of course, with the South being mostly all conservative, especially where I'm from, with the exception of like really big cities, like I know Atlanta leans blue, so that's a huge difference for me at least.
Conservative in what sense?
Politically.
One or two comments or comparisons?
About.
That Knoxville or the South with what? You know, what kind of that is conservative can mean smoking. It can mean drinking. It can mean
more just like their political like views on on issues like abortion, denying climate change, anti-immigration, popular political issues. They all lean conservative for the most part, with the exception of big cities.
Okay. Anything else on the South? We had a student a couple of years ago who said, I got a call from my teacher calling my mother. And my mother said, I'm calling about your daughter. Yes. She doesn't say sir or ma'am. Want to comment on hospitality or the South or anything like that? That aspect, what does that capture? In that is a parent getting a phone call from a teacher, your child should use sir and ma'am.
The South, Southern people are more like traditions.
Okay, traditional, yeah. Traditional in what sense, and what specific sense leads to that label of sir and ma'am?
Does it have to do with the history of slavery in the South and the kind of political dynamic or social dynamic that's come with it? And maybe it's like a holdover in some sense from that?
Yes. But what might be a label for that, which is a sort of a simple one word that would capture some of this? We could call it hierarchy or authority. And then it's not just the American South. Hierarchy and authority you have in Russia, in Ukraine, in China, in ways that differ. And where and how that works and interacts with the other things has a lot of implications. For example, it's been said that the American military speaks with a Southern accent. What does that imply? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it has to do with hierarchy in the army, it's very like there's a lot of ranks and it's a form of like protocol, and if we're talking about like certain man is pretty similar.
Yes. That's important. It makes people feel comfortable more respecting authority and following orders from top down rather than bottom up. Now, all the discussion in the media between Russia and Ukraine, clearly, it's not as if these are absolutes and they're exactly the same, but the point is the American, say, Atlanta or Knoxville compared to Chicago, and I'm saying when we say Chicago, I'm even hesitating to say that because there are differences in different neighborhoods in Chicago. And that's why Chicago is such a great city, because we can walk across the street and you're in a different neighborhood. It's got a different culture, a subculture. And those can connect with Russia, Ukraine, China, in ways that are traditional and capture those kinds of differences. And that's what's the background of what's called the Chicago School of Urbanism. And some of that there. But let me try it over here. If you could maybe see if this looks as if it catches more or less my, yeah, I think that's about right. Okay. This is what brings people here to study cities, people who live here or who are visitors, and the idea of tourism, or a new term, hot term right now, cultural tourism. Why are people attracted to come to Chicago? Tourism is the first or third largest industry in the world. It's much bigger than computers or automobiles. Tourism is huge. People, and I mean, most visible, you can see it in Chicago, but obviously you go to a place like Florence in Italy, you know, the tourists have taken over the city, and people move out altogether because they can't shop, and their old shops are closing down because they're selling postcards for tourists, or the restaurants or other things which are quite different. We have very little data, very little theory about how does tourism work. That is, there are people in taxis, hotels, travel agents, narrowly. But the broader question, which is what attracts people to come to Chicago, and Chicago also has conventions, and that aspect is massive. And the last few mayors, I won't say, there are big differences we'll talk about from mayor to mayor, but these change a lot from one person to the next in ways that we elaborate with the tourism sensitivity. But in the past, people would come to the convention. Men usually would go there alone for, say, 2 days and then go home. Now they come for maybe 5 days. They may come with their families, partners, children, and they spend through the weekend. They go to museums, they go shopping, they go to restaurants, they explore the nightlife, and they go to different neighborhoods that attract them, as well as do journalists and sociologists and others. Okay. What makes different neighborhoods be attractive and dynamic? That's, in a sense, the core of what we're going to talk about in this course. What makes areas and cities dynamic or vital. That's a very vague term, vital. The meanings shift with different theories, but the main past studies would consider population and economic growth. If you're growing in population, you're having more retail sales, that's vital. Others have added citizen satisfaction, citizen concerns such as the environment, health, clean air, crime, happiness. Do you like your city? Do you want to move in the next 5 years or not? These are ways of calibrating in surveys and then capturing and gradually increasing data to capture these more subtle measures of vitality and dynamism. Is my head being cut off, or is it okay?
It's a little cut off.
Okay. We need to. Yeah, maybe just try to lifting it up a little bit. Let's give that a shot. How's that?
I think that'll work.
About right?
I just need to tilt it back a little bit.
Yeah, don't reach on the top. Just put your hand under, just under the camera where it's black.
Here.
One more down, just a little bit lower. Right here. And then hold it down on the base.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's good.
How's that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. I have lots of pictures with heads cut off, and it's less interesting. Okay. Citizens. New. Population and economic growth is old. The course is an overview of key concepts and findings from urban sociology, politics, geography, and economics. These are the main disciplines that have dealt with this, but there are many more: journalists, tourists, restaurateurs, all kinds of people. And the news is that there's lots of lively debate about what drives cities, what makes them more vital, or what makes them more hierarchical. If we say big cities, that implies that size drives change. And lots of things people say, oh, big cities are like this, small towns are like that. But usually, the null hypothesis is if we bring in other things, education, income, travel, et cetera, usually the impact of population size gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That is, most of size is what we call spurious. Spuriousness is, you think it's so I think this can be population size, this can be education. If we add education, the impacts of population tends to drop enormously. And if you then add, go down to xn, x1, x2, x3, start to add more things. Sorry, let's close. N here. Ed Glazer, urban economist at Harvard, trained at Chicago, top guy, and working on these issues. He has a paper on happiness, and he has about 100 variables. The classic economic variables count almost not. Income, occupation are pretty low in happiness. Many things drive happiness. He has 100 or so. Many, many things, but family, connections, personal relations, these are much more important than income and occupation, for example, in the studies of very smart economists. Okay, the point is, sociologists more often talk about, oh, but its income explains everything. Okay. Sociologists like using income. The economists who are smart started talking about amenities. What are amenities? Anybody have a course or they heard about that? Amenities, simple ideas. Amenities are non-market goods and services. Non-markets. So you don't pay for them. You don't buy them. You can't, they're not sold in a market. But they're things like clean air or crime or good schools or the reputation of good schools. These are amenities. And the same guy, Ed Glazer, has said non-market goods are more important than market goods in explaining how cities work. Okay. So the economists discovered amenities about 30 years ago, before the geographers and the sociologists, for instance. And they started developing theories about these non-market goods may matter, and that was their big concept. But their measures tended to be cinemas or museums, and they try to take one or two of these, and then they started initially, say, with clean air and January temperature, because those were available from the census, and you can get it for and they usually would use, the classic urban economists have used metro areas. So the Chicago metro area is cold in January traditionally, and warm in the summer. Okay. I taught a course called Urban Economics with George Tully, who's the classic urban economist here, started working on these things in Chicago. And then talking about these things, so these are important, but do we just want a museum or clean air? What drives you to compare Knoxville to Chicago? What other things might you think about?
In terms of amenities, Knoxville has really great public parks, public hotspots. There are places where farmers markets happen, which are kind of social hubs, which I guess is a market, but even the social aspect I would view as an amenity.
Where's our little fan down there? Is it? Yeah. Can you put it up on the table? Because we've got so we can put it up on the table and then aim it down toward the window. Do we have it? Is it running okay? Can you press it once more and see if it's noisy? Just right in the middle of the back. Okay, that's once. Press it twice. Not 3 times, just. Is that too noisy? Okay, let's try that. We're trying these things out now. Okay. Who wants to add a few more amenities? Let's say in Hyde Park compared to Bronzeville. I live in Bronzeville, which is an African-American neighborhood halfway between here and downtown. What's the difference between Bronzeville and Hyde Park? Yeah.
Obviously the university and the community that it brings with it.
Okay. Community might include
like your friends or your coworkers and the value you derive from those social relationships.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you count hospital as an
entity? If it's there and it's nearby, and you feel more comfortable and protected, it's an amenity. If you have to write a check, that's the market transaction, even if it's your health insurance that pays. So that's the difference between the market and the non-market side. But the the point is, even if the hospital officially is maintained financially by lots of money, the fact that you can, especially if you want to have quick service, and if you're elderly and you're worried about your health, you may want to live nearby, or let's say you don't live on the top of a mountain in Colorado, as some people do, who may have started that way and they move closer to bigger metro areas, either to Denver or whatever. But so the point is to distinguish between, to keep in the back of your mind, you can have a simple answer like population size, but a more subtle answer is amenities are also there, and the feel of, like a hospital is a good example, that yes, I'll go there and I'll use my car, my Blue Cross, whatever insurance card, if I have to. But a lot of the comfort may be not just what happens with one transaction with one doctor, but maybe the feeling that there are lots of specialists there if I need them. Okay. That's one point, that the same institution can be either a market transaction or an amenity, and we're going to talk about both of these in different sections of the course. But here's an interesting economic corollary that the economists then came up with and said, you know, where do people migrate to? Do you want to migrate to New York or Chicago, or let's say Shanghai or London, where you'll have to pay a lot more for housing and for food and for other things than if you went to where it's cheaper? Would you take a job? Okay, let me ask a question I often ask. Would you take a job when you finished a BA? Would you take a job in Chicago that pays you $50,000, or would you take the same job, same corporation has another branch in a small town in South Dakota, and it will pay you $100,000, twice as much? How many of you would take the Chicago job? Little higher? Okay, and how many of you would take the South Dakota job? Okay, a lot of people don't want to say. But why would you take the South Dakota job?
Well,
and there's no one right or wrong answer, and it doesn't have to be what's deeply in your heart. But imagine someone who's giving that kind of answer. For example, you can say, I love mountain biking.
I don't want to retire in South Dakota, but by making more money, I can enjoy later on, assuming that I don't have to, the contract does not require me to live my whole life in South Dakota. I have more resources to enjoy cultural tourism in the future.
Okay, absolutely. These are very important points to hear the calculation, including the income which can be accumulated, saved in the bank or stock market or whatever, and then in the future you can move to London, or whatever. All right. So, but those are important points in terms of the attraction, paying off student loans, etc. Helping your parents, and where and how much are you concerned about your parents? In some places, how many people would say they would take the job in South Dakota because they want to help their parents? How many would say that? Okay. If we asked, okay, so maybe two. If we were in China, okay, we now have here. We're going to introduce. Let me introduce, please. We have Professor Chen here. Professor Chen. Could you just briefly mention a little bit about yourself, as you are an important amenity for this class?
Talk about something about China.
Yes, and yourself.
Oh, okay.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Please.
As I introduce myself, I'm from a very beautiful place, Hangzhou, and this is a very have a very long history, and also now it's very modern city. Nowadays, it has held the 19th sports meeting there, and have a very bigger and wonderful opening ceremony. You know, Chairman Xi also with his wife been there to attend the ceremony. So it's very big event in China. Before I come here, I also have a meeting about this scene series, and I talk about the place of Hangzhou. Yeah. Just to talk about it. Maybe we can discuss after many classes, not just this class.
We will use some examples nationally and internationally. We will try to use China, France, Yugoslavia are three places where I've done research and worked with people and continue, and especially China. One point about China is roughly at the end of World War II, what was the per capita income for the Chinese or the Indians and, let's say, in Africa? They would be pretty close. That is, that these were poor countries in 1945. China has phenomenally grown in terms of the obvious things that you can measure easily: income, GNP, and so forth. But as they've gotten more and more affluent, in recent years, the Chinese have become much more concerned about citizens, pollution, happiness, cultural tourism, parks, and things like this. And where and how these matter, they're paying a lot of attention to. And the book where we featured this is called Scenescapes. And when it came out translated into Chinese, there it is. There were people who, we've had about 90, 100 people who visitors here from China for several decades. And some of them, three, started to say, let's discuss these issues. Could you go this way, please? Three of them created a Scenes Academy, including me and Dan Silver, who are the co-authors. Dan will talk about it as well. Dan's now a professor at the University of Toronto. He was a grad student here at the time when we started. And the Scenes Academy has been around for maybe 4 years, and when it started, it had maybe 30, 50 conferences, 30, 50 people, 80 people, and then the word spread, and then they had an annual meeting called a summit, and that summit conference then was initially several thousand, and last December it was 800,000 people were connected online with Zoom kinds of connections. And when there was discussion about having the next 5-year plan, there was a group called the Red Star that said, let's have some ideas. What should we make our cities and make our lives in China more interesting and more lively, and as well as more entrepreneurial, and make them better. And after some of this was featured, the scene was adopted in 6 different places in the 5-year plan. And that is what led to the driving of 800,000 people are doing this, and have been doing this now in Chengdu, Beijing, Shanghai, and small villages in China. So a question which I'll leave as a question now, because we'll talk about this through the course. Why are the Chinese paying so much attention? And if you look at the Western press, you see almost nothing about things like this. You read about military conflict, about Taiwan. You see conflicts. You see those narrow external kinds of things of only a certain sort in ways that domestically, and if you look at what's happening and what's on the minds of many of the Chinese, it's much more domestic. And that's what we're going to elaborate. But even when you take that, I mean, we have domestic and international politics in every country. But why is China paying so much more attention than our other places in these specific sorts of ways? Okay. I'm not going to try to answer, but we have a real expert working on this. But we want to use that question to try to ask the same thing. Why is Knoxville different from Houston, is different from Chicago, and is Hyde Park different from Lincoln Park, and it's different from Bronzeville? Okay. Why do we ask those questions? Because they can help us analyze the causal dynamics, and then we can do things like we can call this City 1. We can have another called City 2, and then we can have, and we have in some of our data we have over 10,000 cities. People are participating, working on these scenes in South Korea, in Japan, in France, in Spain, in Poland. These are places we started working earlier on economic growth and population growth, geography, proximity, population size. Yeah, everybody knows about that, and we worked on that 50 years ago, 30 years ago, and so forth. But as we get to amenities, and the economists are saying, the sociologists, money doesn't always explain everything. Really, the sociologists say? I thought it explained everything. Okay. Etc. So the big past, one of the classic big theories was called central place theory. People who live in the center of a city will pay the most money to build on land, or to live, or to work there. And as you move further away, the land value goes down. And the Burgess here in Chicago then drew concentric circles and said, okay, these are called different kinds of downtown business, and then different aspects of activity. And those before they had television, telephones, online, this was important. But when we get now, if this is working right, you don't have to come to class. You can look online and look at that while you're running up the lakefront at midnight. That's different. Land value is less explained by distance, physical distance, and Brian Barry's done a study which shows in every decade from about 1870, 1880 on up to more recent years, this kind of picture has gone something more like that. But then, more important, there are other factors. I talked about happiness. Other things become more and more important as well in terms of why do I want to live in Lincoln Park or the so-called Gold Coast or The Slum was the title of a famous book, The Gold Coast and the Slum. These things that were there and the factors that were used to explain them have changed. And those are measurable with things like this. When we can compare, if we can compare neighborhoods and compare cities, then we can try to bring in more systematically, how is it China, or is it the South, or is it Knoxville? So both of you talked about Atlanta or Knoxville. You both sort of qualified and said, well, bigger cities in the South. Well, you know, how much and why? If we try to understand what, and so why does this matter also in terms of policy implications? Where do you need to, what do you have to do to change it? How can you make people be richer or more comfortable financially? Big questions, of course. And people have been fighting over this, but we're going to go over some of these factors, including different definitions of economic development including happiness here, for instance, and other things. So the course will go through section 1, regimes, leadership. You can talk about the name of the mayor. This is Daley's city. This is Al Capone's city, and that drives Chicago into crime, etc. Black power, Oakland, California. That is, we can add, that is, let me say that many of the analysts have then said, what is there about the leadership in a city? Has it been dominated everywhere or to some degree? That is the main theory in the 20th century, in addition to population sizes that sort of went down, was business leadership. Isn't it capitalism, or within China, is it still the concerns for economic growth? Same thing in Yugoslavia. In socialist countries as well, there's a lot, I mean, there's a huge concern from 1945 as people were getting more and more affluent. Where and why was this driven by corporations? So that is, if the President of the United States is working with the strikers in Detroit, is this helping economic growth? Is it helping the unions? Is it helping him being, maybe he wants to be reelected? But where and how these things get handled are subtle. The one closely linked thing is the concept in the Marxist background of class. How about do we have workers versus managers? And many of the people who had the strong theories about business leadership, you know, would explicitly say, this is, well, Marx told us about that, it's obvious, isn't it? Rich versus poor. So not only, so Bourdieu, sociologist, doesn't talk about income, he talks about the dominated and the dominating. So that's hierarchy in that sense. But in that sense, what are the dimensions of domination or leadership? They could be access to the means of production, which would be a Marxist answer, or it can be race or education or something else. And so race or ethnicity is a classic American answer, whereas the Europeans, especially, let's say the Scandinavians, where they're more ethnically, classically, very ethnically, very homogeneous. Class politics is still stronger in Scandinavia than most anywhere else in the world. In the U.S., historically, the ethnic groups, the Poles, the Irish, the Germans, the Italians, were politically important in sailing, or Chinatown. These were the organizations, not proletarians of the world unite. You never heard that in America to speak of. That is, people try, but the quick answer is that the reason that is, there was a classic European theoretical question: why is there no socialism in America? Auf Deutsch. Okay, so and the classic answer that they gave, Sombart, was ethnicity, immigration, those they were still worrying and wondering, but it was answered here at the University of Chicago by a political scientist, and he developed what he called group theory. And the groups, then David Truman developed the theory further, but the core idea was if you have people who are different, they tend to create groups. And groups could be neighborhood groups, they could be a precinct captain of a political party, but that's tricky because when we have the biggest political machine in the United States, that can work top down. And so maybe civic groups, or let's say groups, may be top down or bottom up. But the point is, the group is different from a class okay, I won't go on any further on that. So that's regimes, leadership. Second big theory of factors is markets. And I'm going to just mention briefly, Paul Peterson made the argument that competition is so important that no city can really do things alone, because the competition may drive others out or attract them away. And so Peterson even said, if you try to tax the rich and give the money to the poor, the rich people will move away. Therefore, if we want to have redistribution from rich to poor, we should only let the national government do that and not try to do this locally. But if education is a big factor where redistribution can go on, as well as public health, public housing, those are predominantly provided financially by the national government inside most American cities. That most of the money for redistribution is not local. However, in New York and Chicago, and our current mayor right now, he ran and said, we want to tax the rich and help the poor more in Chicago. He never read the book by Peterson. He's doing the opposite. And James Buchanan and a bunch of others who said competition will drive and so, okay, I won't, I'll send you hear the beginnings of that. The third big factor is political culture, like the South, or the culture of hierarchy can be stronger in the South, with a residue going back to slavery. So with slavery, the slaves were initially indentured servants in England. Indentured servants meant that you have to serve for 5 years or 10 years and be a slave, and then you'll be free. And so there were people in England who organized with their neighbors who'd stolen a silver teacup, and they got in 5 years of prison. And then they filled up all the prisons in England, and they filled them up all the ships, etc. So I won't. But so and the ships filled up all the river around the Thames in London, and elsewhere. When after the American Revolution happened, so that's where Australia got created. Okay, so the point is the interpenetration and where and how these migration patterns, such as the creation of Australia as a British civilized area, and where and how that changed. These are forms of political culture. So there's Elazar, Daniel Elazar, E-L-A-Z-A-R, we'll talk about especially. People carry culture on their backs. Fourth theory is urban innovation. Richard Florida has pulled this together in a bestseller. He took this mostly directly from Jane Jacobs, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. Basically, the big idea is that building on the idea, the recognition of Schumpeter, Ed Glaser, Daniel Bell, talking about post-industrial society. If we move from Marx, from land under an agriculture in a capitalist society, or pre-capitalist, an agricultural society, we get to capitalism with markets and factories and circulation of capital. But then when we get to post-industrial society, Bell stresses knowledge is the driver. It's not money, it's not the factory, it's not land, it's knowledge. And we're at the center of creating knowledge, universities and cities. And cities, people in cities are the drivers of more often knowledge, R&D, and then of course it's concentrated big tech, Silicon Valley, etc. Or those foci, and then this has come up in all kinds of domains. Offices, hospitals, etc., have found the same thing. Innovation is really changing hospitals. It's changing, obviously, medicine. What do you do about COVID? Injection. Is a new injection available? And flu shots are giving them. I have gotten them. Some people are arguing about this, but I got mine last week. CVS has them. Some of the hospitals don't. Fifth big factor: the arts, consumption time, leisure, play, and work of high and low culture have come together in ways that never have been introduced. How many of you would have thought that the arts might be mentioned like this in this course? How many imagine that would be central? Nobody. Okay, see that? I mean, in my life, I may have been interested in going to museums or going to movies or reading books and so forth, but the discovery when Robert Putnam published a book called Bowling Alone, and he said, we're destroying American politics because people are not joining the Boy Scouts, the churches, the civic groups, the neighborhood associations, and as this is falling apart, this is going to lead to the loss of consensus, of consensuality, of working together with other people instead of being selfish individualists. Okay, that's the simple argument of Bowling Alone. But we then got the data. We went over the same kinds of data with Peter Ochterberg here one summer, and we looked through different kinds of activities that people may be declining in. Churches, Boy Scouts, they're going down. Big exception was the arts, stand-up comedy, theater, doing yourself. And college students on this campus, the Logan Center is, this University of Chicago had almost nothing, no visible stuff on the arts on this campus. Now it's exploded. This is the faculty and students, let me qualify. Most of the faculty still don't know about this. But I found this, in a simple, in a quasi-inductive way. I didn't have this theory in advance. We analyzed the data and found Putnam was wrong. It's taking off, but nobody's talked about this. So we then started to look more closely, and there's a lot of evidence if we start to look at it. And mayors were doing this before professors. Mayor Daley was doing this, and Mayor Daley too, Harold Washington, they really paid attention to this. And after them, with Rahm Emanuel, the amenities, the arts, the sports, the leisure activities, these really made a difference. And these have been in the 4-mile downtown area of downtown Chicago. Compared to the suburbs, which city is highest in the United States in having the fastest growth of people from 25 to 34 in its downtown 4-mile area? LA, Houston, Austin? Yes. Anybody went over? Chicago. Chicago? It's been burned. Michigan Avenue has been boarded up. How can this be happening when this is happening in Chicago? All that crime in downtown Chicago? People are going there? As we say in the syllabus, every week you'll hear many things that contradict the New York Times and CNN, and we're going to explore them because we have a group of them here. There are about 20 of us called the Chicago School, and we meet and we publish together. We taught 3 times. We taught courses together. We have the best urban people in the area in Chicago, and then of course we work with people from China, Poland, France, Spain, and so forth, and we compare and study these with data, and we share them with each other. So we give our data. We don't just say these are my data with my students. We share them, and then some people, okay, I'll analyze what they did with their same methods. I'll use it in Canada and compare that to Spain. And we'll find, hey, it's the same thing happening in both. Hey, the arts are driving growth in Spain and in Canada. Hey, and it's not in the New York Times. Okay, yeah, all right. Let me stop there for a moment. I'll mention there's a bike ride we're going to have on October 14, Saturday. Look at the Chicago's Studies website. If you're interested, you need to register in advance and get a bike if you don't have one here. But it's 3-4 hour, 4 of us do it, and I've done it. I started it maybe 20 plus years ago. We've done it with John Boyer, who was dean of the college, and Mark Hansen was dean of social science. And we each have 3 different views, and we change and sometimes disagree, and then come back the next year. We change it around, but it's a lot of fun. So let me stop there. Let's talk a little bit more about any and all questions and reactions.
I have a question.
Okay.
Because I'm new here, and I'm puzzled that when I go to the supermarket and buy the water, the bottle, this city will charge a tax the bottle. So I wonder, because in China there's no actual tax for empty bottle. Yeah, this is maybe concerning the urban policy. So I'm very puzzled about this. This is one question.
Yeah, sorry.
Can we discuss?
I'm trying. Yes, let's discuss. I don't hear the specific question. That is the question: is there a tax, and how large is that tax? What is that your question, or what is your precise question? Or
I just to compare another place. When we buy a bottle of water, and we just pay for it, but we have to pay extra empty bottle. So I'm very puzzled and I want to.
That is, no,
Yeah.
you say, that is, you mean you return the bottle and get.
No. Just buy the water and to pay extra money about the empty bottle.
The empty,
Empty bottle.
Plastic bottle.
but you don't pay just for the bottle, you pay the bottle filled with water.
Because the water maybe $2, but I have to pay extra empty bottle, maybe 1 cent, maybe like that. I'm very puzzled about this policy.
But when you say it's extra, you mean how do you know that? Because it's on the receipt, and when you look at the bill.
Yeah, and look
Okay.
bill and ask her, ask them about this.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
do you understand that the main item is called sales tax?
Sales tax, I see.
Is that
I
what you
see.
mean, or is that something different?
Something different.
Okay. Now then go ahead. You know,
And then yesterday I after I drink the water and I leave them together, and I asked the supermarket if they will get back the empty bottle, and they said no. Yeah, not to recycle. So I'm very puzzled about
yeah,
this.
I think the quick answer is I don't know. Does anybody know what the answer is?
I'm puzzled about this policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think, but the big thing, at least, which one should pay attention to, which varies from city to city, is the sales tax. So this is a government tax,
Yeah.
and that varies a lot. And in the city of Chicago, the sales tax is very high. One important, so for instance, if some people, when they want to buy cigarettes or gasoline, they will drive to the state of Indiana, south of, east of here, and they get gasoline and cigarettes and then come back to Chicago, because the sales tax is lower in the state and in the cities nearby. And it used to be, and there are big differences when you go to suburbs. Like Schaumburg is a big shopping center, and the shopping center drives the city revenues in ways that they have no property tax. So usually, if you have a house, you pay a tax on land and the home, and that falls way down if you're in a place like Schaumburg where you have a big mall, and that generates the revenue for the city government.
I understand. I just want to propose, if you charge the extra fee, then you can recycle. That's
normal.
the point.
Yes, and that would be the normal answer in the past, especially when it was glass. So if you have glass, then you recycle glass. If it's plastic, then that's usually not. So I don't know if it's a carryover from the past when we had that kind of recycling.
But another city I heard, maybe New York or other city will have a recycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In like New York, you pay like a 5 or 10 cents deposit on the bottle, and they have like some centers where if you bring back all your bottles,
Yeah.
you get those cents back.
Yes.
But these
That's
are
true.
glass rather than
No,
plastic.
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 So plastic.
I see from internet.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So in that sense, it's an incentive. So yes, and that would be the normal driver,
Yeah.
following a simple, narrow economic incentive. But if we look at the physical things like clean air and the cash you get back from recycling, is that really what drives environmental activism? Usually not. It tends to be much more education, people who are linked with other friends who are doing recycling, who are concerned about the environment. That has exploded. If we look at civic membership, the Sierra Club has the name of the mountains in the West. The Sierra Club is very active in each country in Africa and Latin America. We had a guy in the class, he worked for 20 years for the United Nations. He went to all these new countries creating a new government, and the Sierra Club would show up and would say, okay, here we are in Mozambique. We have 300 pages which we propose you use in creating your Ministry of the Environment. And that kind of environmental sensitivity, the largest organization I think is called Friends of the Birds in England, has more members than all the political parties and gets more money in contributions than all the political parties in the US and in England, for example. The birds. Politicians, we don't care about. Birds matter. For the English, at least. But not just the English, that's the point. That is, the environment is a very hot issue. This is one kind of division that is a big point behind this that we'll talk about is issue areas. The environment, and then within that the birds, or within that hunting. In England is a very big political issue, you know, and then now I say in England, Italy same way. That France and Italy, the classic left and peasants were not permitted to hunt. Only the upper status persons could hunt, and that was seen as a high-low kind of difference in ways that make it people, the classic local farmers and local rural people in good parts of Italy and France, they go out and shoot anytime they want to. They ignore the law because the law has been remade, or that is sometimes, so they've partially changed this. But my point is, you have those things which have been officially there in the past, and then the law is then being transformed by actions such as the President of the United States marching with the strikers. Imagine that in 1880. Okay. Questions? More? Comments? Yes?
This is more of a logistical question about the course
Sure.
itself.
Go ahead.
You mentioned it's interdisciplinary. For readings in which that are kind of like outside the discipline we normally engage with, do you have any recommendations on like how to approach those?
You'll be surprised at how often the specific disciplines don't really matter that much. I would say people who are working on these issues like bottling and taxes and cigarettes and things like this, when they start to work on that kind of topic, they learn about that topic, and that they may not get advanced engineering or at the cutting edge, but the knowledge about the substantive area tends to be often more important than the general background, such as political science versus sociology, for instance. So yes, there may be some disciplinary differences, but I've gone to lots of meetings, especially public policy. Public policy is not one substantive topic. It covers many things which link together across these. Or law. You have people get law degrees, but they don't tell you anything about taxes or about inheritance or about crime or whatever. So you have to learn that on the job or in a law firm, or you can take other courses when you're in law school. So those, and then second big thing is, whatever you learn here is going to be obsolete in 10 or 20 years anyway. That is, you've got to learn new things. You've got to learn how to learn yourself, and that's much more important. And what do we call it? General education. And so in that sense, this is part of your general education. If you're majoring in, you can say I'm pre-law, pre-med, pre-business. This is part of a general education, and these matter because even if you think having that specialty training you need to understand what leads to people in China or in the US or in France being happier or not, and what does the research say? So being able to use those on the job and then to recognize the changes is a critical. This is the whole point of the innovation aspect of the sections in the course. Follow up. Any other question? Sure. Is that your hand up? No. Okay. No. It's your water bottle. I can say more about lots of all these kinds of things. I'm surprised people of this. It's the first session. Yeah, you'll get more. But let me mention, for example, a couple of points about, say, the New York, Chicago, and LA schools. The let me ask what the time is. I got the wrong time, or am I an hour off?
15.
Is it 4
10 to 6.
10 to 6. So it's no, but it's 5:44.
5:50.
Yeah. Okay. No. See, this clock says 4:44. Okay. So I'm an hour off. That's what I thought. Okay. The Chicago with the origin of sociology in the U.S. is really Chicago, and the division of social sciences has classically been the strongest division in the whole university, more so than the humanities, more so than the natural sciences, and so people have come here because it's so, in part because the city is so fascinating, and people have studied these kinds. Max Weber came here from Germany to see Chicago, and he said, you know, my God, it's like a person with its skin cut off. You can see all these things moving in ways that you can't see this in Germany or in France. Okay, so Chicago is the background. The LA group, Michael Deere is a leader. There's maybe 10 people met in LA, and they said, let's create the new LA school, a new approach, and it's really suburbs, and it's decentralized, and so there may be people who are further from the center, and so distance is there, but the stuff was, but the core concepts of distance are transformed by freeways. And by freeways and mass transit and communication, which are new aspects of the economy, and they took their sociology from the Frankfurt School, which was a Marxism combined with Freud, with sort of sensuality and film as a driver in giving you things can then propagandize you. You can do it this way, and so for control, this is the background of the LA school. The New York school is linked more to Milan and to Paris, and we got that's fine. We got a deadline. But we should continue about 6 more minutes. Am I right? Is that?
No.
Okay, so that's good. I'm asking. So okay, tell me the exact time, somebody.
5:52.
5:52.
It ends at 5:50.
Okay, let's quit now, and we'll stay here I'll have an office. Normally Monday is office hours. I'll talk to you individually if there are things you want to stay by right now. Okay. See you on Monday next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, that's RJ. Yeah, good seeing you around. You, what's your major? I feel like I've seen your always.